tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern, the Brandon's World Merry Christmas special goes live as I will give you my recap of the top moments in 2024 in sports. Then I'll also give you my WB 2024 Slammy Awards. I will give you my predictions for 2025 in sports. Plus, we play one of our favorite games here on Brandon's World, Fair or Foul, with my main man, Jalen Sandvik. And for the first time in nearly 3 years, I bring on my good friend, my actual best friend, actually, Andrew Bacca. We talk all things 2024, sports and beyond. It's our biggest show of the year. We look back at the year in sports and pop culture. Brandon's World. Merry Christmas 2024 as the holiday season commences. With that, last week in Brandon's best bets, I went 4-4-5. That was one of our best weeks in weeks. Again, the only miss we had was Carolina -2.5. I did take all favorites. This week, I'm taking four favorites. I'm taking one dog. We have a Thursday game. We have two Saturday games. We have 12 Sunday games, including a Sunday night matchup, and we have a Monday night game as well. We got a lot to break down here. Without further ado, let's get into my Week 16 money line picks and best bets. We're starting it off with a best bet. Thursday night football. I like the Chargers to cover at least three. Home against the Denver Broncos here. I think the Chargers are the more desperate team. They've lost two in a row. They lost that heartbreaker to Kansas City. They lost to Tampa Bay at home last week. I think that they want to catch Denver, potentially leapfrog them into either the number 6 or number 5 spot in the AFC, and have a favorable matchup here to play Houston as opposed to going to Pittsburgh or going to Baltimore or even Buffalo if Pittsburgh were to get that free seat in the AFC. Chargers already beat them once this year. That was in Denver. Now, Bo Nix was not the same quarterback. Denver, they are already in 9 wins this year, and their over-under is at 5.5. That could very well qualify Sean Payton to get Coach of the Year there in Denver, Colorado, because I thought Bo Nix would be good. I didn't think he'd be this good this quickly. And that Denver defense, led by former Broncos head coach Vance Joseph, has been one of the top 5 units in the league this year, even without J.K. Dobbins. And listen, the Chargers offense, they did barely escape with a win at Atlanta, so they have not been right since Dobbins has been out. But they got a lot of weapons. This is a divisional game. I think Jim Harbaugh is going to lean on that physicality. I think Jesse Minter and that Chargers defense is going to make it real tough to see the picture for Broncos quarterback Bo Nix. At this point, I actually think the Chargers need the game more than Denver. Denver, who's got a huge matchup at Cincinnati the next week. They'll have 10 days to prepare for that game. Maybe it's a little bit of a walk-ahead spot. On a short week, I like the home team, even though obviously it's not that much of a home field advantage in LA. I think Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert will just find a way to win this game. If they lose, I think that they'll probably lose by three or so. So this spread could be flipped, but I like the Chargers here to cover that three number. Okay, the time of this recording, it's actually a Tuesday. I'm not able to record on Wednesday this week, so I don't know the severity of Patrick Mahomes' injury. It sounds like to me Carson Wentz is in line to start. That's what the gambling odds would say. There's no other reason why the Texans would be a 2.5 point favorite here at the time of this recording. I actually think Kansas City is going to somehow find a way to win the game. As I said on Tuesday's show, I think Carson Wentz will play well in Andy Reid's system. We saw him play well in Week 18 last year with the Rams and Sean McVay. Maybe he's learned something from Carson Wentz. I think the Chiefs' defense will show out. They will stop Joe Mixon in the backfield. They will make C.J. Stroud throw his way down the field. There's also a dome team in Houston going outside of Kansas City on a short week where they have not played well in weeks. They could have lost to Miami if Tua Tagovailoa in that passing game had any consistency to it. Houston has a good pass rush, and that Will Anderson and Alshire and all the pieces that they have there, that could be the difference in the game. As the weak point of Kansas City's team this year, as we all know, is the offensive line, specifically at left tackle. They have three very good interior guys with Tooney, and Humphrey and crew, but they struggle on the outside. That could be the difference in the game, but I still think Kansas City somehow finds a way to win the game because the Texans' offense just has not been good this year. Pittsburgh at Baltimore. I'm actually doing a best bet here on this Saturday game, 4:30 Eastern on Fox. I'm taking the Steelers with the points. It's 6.5. Who knows if Pittsburgh's going to have George Pickens or not? They lost by 14 to Philadelphia. I don't think they lose by double digits again. This is a rivalry game. Since when do the Ravens ever beat the Steelers by more than a touchdown? I think the Ravens beat up on a bad Giants team last week, and as great as Lamar Jackson is, as much as the Ravens really need this game, we know the Steelers' history. We know the way that they contain Lamar Jackson in the pocket. We know Pittsburgh, in my opinion, is going to really muddy this up. I think it's going to be a defensive game. A lot of field goals here for Chris Boswell and Justin Tucker. Boswell has been the more accurate kicker this year. Again, Baltimore needs the game more because if they lose, Pittsburgh will automatically clinch the AFC North. Baltimore will have to go on the road, and it's a real scenario where they could go on the road back to Pittsburgh in the wild card round. It should be a real interesting scenario, especially if they already lost twice to Pittsburgh. I think if they went back to Pittsburgh, they probably have a good chance to win that game. But I like the Ravens here to split the season series, keep their AFC North hopes alive. Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson will do just enough to win, but I think 6.5 is way too many points. I like the Steelers side. Eagles at Commanders. Philadelphia favored by 3.5. Listen, I think this is going to be a very close game. The game in week 11 in Philadelphia was 10-6 in the fourth quarter. Then all of a sudden, Saquon Barkley turned it on in the fourth quarter. Eagles dominated the offensive line of scrimmage. That's your ball game. I think Washington's offense has struggled the last couple of weeks maintaining drives in the second half. They've always been a good first half team this year, and Cliff Kingsbury has always been a good first half play caller, not necessarily a great second half play caller. So, with that in mind, I think it's a very close game. Washington is obviously fighting for their divisional lives. I think this is more low scoring. It's a defensive battle. Dan Quinn's defense is going to make some plays. Washington is going to give Philadelphia everything they can handle. In the end, I think the Eagles' offensive playmakers, they just make more plays. Washington, to me, is more destined for the seventh seed in the NFC wildcard picture anyway. I like Philadelphia here. I'm not going to bet the game, but I like my Eagles to clinch the NFC East. They need it more than Washington because they are chasing Detroit down for that number one seed in the NFC. At this point in time, I don't know who's starting for the Browns, whether it's Jameis Winston, whether it's DTR, as I proposed on Tuesday. I don't think it matters. Bengals -7. I think Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, they unload on this Browns defense the same way they did in week 7. I think the Browns struggle offensively to move the football. Again, week 7 was the game where Deshaun Watson went down. DTR actually came into the game as the backup. Jameis Winston came in late in that game, especially if it's DTR here at quarterback. The Browns' offensive line's in shambles. Without Nick Chubb, they really only have two playmakers. Jerry Jeudy, who's been excellent, and Jerome Ford, who's been improving as a running back. But in the end, I think the Bengals, they're on a mission to play better. They can beat up on bad football teams, even with their bad defense. The offense, I think, will be too much for Cleveland to handle. I like Cincinnati -7. I also like Indy -4.5. Again, Anthony Richardson's not great. No, but he can make better plays than Will Levis. The Colts have owned the Titans historically in the past. I just don't trust Will Levis. I think Indianapolis will be able to cover 4.5. I think they're mad from that situation that happened last week where they had the game won at Denver and they sort of gave it away to Denver. They still believe there's a little bit of a chance for them to make the playoffs. Anthony Richardson obviously will be fighting for his starting quarterback status next year, potentially for Indy. He's not been great throughout his career. He has a 50% completion percentage, but in the end, this is Shane Steichen over Brian Callahan and Will Levis. I like the Colts here. I know it's a divisional game. Titans are probably going to play well for a half. They'll make me sweat it. But in the end, again, I think Will Levis gives the game away. I like Indy minus 4.5. I also like the Rams. I have no idea how they're only 3-point favorites here to the Jets. I don't buy the Jets. I think Aaron Rodgers is a good first half. Devontae Adams obviously came on last week in the second half, but we've seen the historic trend where, Aaron Rodgers has really struggled this year in second halves. He's sort of losing his leg power in the second half. The offense has gone dormant. I don't know how a Jeff Albrecht defense has fallen apart since the Robert Saleh firing. Cover the likes of Kyron Williams, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua out of the backfield. Jared Verse gets after that horrific Jets offensive line. I think this is an easy cover for the Rams -3. So yes, I have gotten all my best bets out of the way here. I have Thursday night game, one on Saturday, and three in the 1 o'clock window on Sunday. Atlanta will defeat the Giants. What do I have to say here? The Giants have given up. I think even with Kirk Cousins in Atlanta, 9.5. I just think there's better bets on the board, but I wouldn't be surprised if Atlanta covered that. I like Arizona here to bounce back against Carolina. As much as the Panthers have played well, and I even think they might cover the 4.5 points here. I think they'll bounce back from the embarrassing loss that they had to Dallas. I think Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals and Jonathan Gannon, who is a defensive-minded head coach, they are still in the thick of things in the NFC West. Kyler Murray has had one bad game, one good game this year, which worries me a little bit because he had a good game, excuse me, against New England. So he is due to struggle a little bit in the passing game, the way Jalen Hurts and the Eagles did against Carolina 2 weeks ago. But again, Arizona needs the game. Obviously, Carolina does not. So give me Arizona. Detroit going to Chicago. Now, Jared Goff in cold weather, this Lions offense, we know they're not the same, but I think this Bears team, they played well against the Lions on Thanksgiving. You could have made a case in week 11, and Matt Eberflus was a competent head coach. They could have won the game. Bears are getting 3 extra points, obviously. That's why it's a 7-point favorite because they are the home team. But this offense has looked broken ever since Eberflus got fired. Thomas Brown, who was a very good interim offensive coordinator, is not a very good interim head coach. They just do not look the same. I think the Lions are hearing a lot of chatter about the fact that they are not the same team after getting destroyed by Buffalo here. And I know it was a 6-point game, but they gave up 48 points. I think they look to make a statement, even in Chicago. For my ego's sake, for a chance for us to get the number one seed, I hope I'm wrong here. I hope the Bears can at least keep it close, but I could very well see a Detroit bludgeoning here. Minnesota at Seattle. I don't know who the Seahawks quarterback is going to be. If it is Geno Smith and he's healthy, this is a game I could see Seattle upsetting Minnesota. But because I'm going to assume here that it is Sam Howell, I think he just turns the ball over way too much. That Brian Flores defense will do enough. Minnesota, I think, will win. But again, very tricky game here because going into Seattle, they just lost to Green Bay. They were embarrassed in prime time. I think Seattle will give Minnesota everything they can handle here in that 4:05 game on Sunday. Vegas is tanking for Shedeur Sanders more than Jacksonville is. Give me the Jaguars over the Raiders. Who cares? I like San Francisco and Kyle Shanahan, who I think knows a lot about Mike McDaniel. They are still fighting a little bit here in that NFC West race. Again, I think they're done. I think going to Miami is a tough place to play. Their secondary has not been as good defensively this year. Now you have Tyreek Hill to worry about, but the injury to Jalen Waddle concerns me a little bit for Miami because their offense only scored 12 points last week in a dome against Houston. They're not the same team. I like Kyle Shanahan and San Francisco, Brock Purdy to bounce back here upset of the week. I think they end Miami's playoff run right here. They go into Miami and win. As great as Drake May and New England has played, and as much as this is a divisional game, I think that Josh Allen Buffalo Bills offense on such a roll, they probably easily cover the 14 and a half. I don't think New England's as bad as a Giants or Raiders. Again, last week with the Ravens coming off a bye, that was a close your eyes and just take the Ravens and hope they cover. I think New England can get a backdoor cover here against Buffalo. I do not understand why they flexed this game into the 4 o'clock window as opposed to a Philadelphia Washington. I think that game has bigger stakes for both teams. Because I think that this game will be more of a rout than the Philadelphia Washington game. But I guess it's to put Josh Allen and that high flying offense in prime time. And listen, I understand the Dallas Cowboys. I understand they have a brand. I was really debating here taking Tampa minus 3.5. I think they just flat out take apart the Dallas Cowboys, who I think can only beat bad teams. And I think Tampa is going to be a very dangerous number 4 seed in the NFC playoff picture. But again, I like Pittsburgh this side. I like Cincinnati. I like Indy. I like the Rams. And I like the Chargers. Tampa would have been my sixth bet in best bets. I think Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys, they got a good pity win last week against the Carolina Panthers. Who cares? Now, Baker Mayfield, we know sometimes when he's feeling odd against a really good team, he plays really well, like the Chargers. There is a chance where against Dallas, like he did against Tampa, he sort of lets his gas a little bit off the pedal here. Dallas makes some good plays. Mike Zimmer's defense, Michael Parsons makes a play. Maybe this is closer than we all think, but this smells to me like a rout. Tampa Bay over Dallas. And speaking of routes, I don't care if it's Shake Haney, Spencer Rattler, Derek Carr, whoever the Saints want to throw out there. Green Bay, they took apart Seattle last Sunday night. They'll do the same to New Orleans. Again, I think there's better numbers on the board here, but if you want to bet Green Bay against New Orleans, I'm not opposing you to do so. This is a close your eyes and take the 13 and a half. And it's another reason why I like Minnesota actually over Seattle, because if Green Bay keeps winning, all of a sudden that Green Bay and Minnesota game is huge for seeding purposes. Because if Green Bay wins out, they may not be able to win the division, but they could overtake Minnesota and be the 5 seed in the NFC. Minnesota then would drop to the 6 seed, and Green Bay at Tampa would be one hell of a first round playoff game, let me tell you. So to recap, I like the Chargers at home over Denver, Kansas City at home over Houston, even with Carson Wentz potentially a quarterback on Saturday. Baltimore Saturday, I like them at home against Pittsburgh. Sunday games, Philadelphia on the road at Washington, Cincinnati against Cleveland, Indy against Tennessee, Rams on the road against the Jets, Atlanta over the Giants, Arizona on the road against Carolina, Detroit on the road against Chicago, Minnesota on the road against Seattle, Jacksonville on the road against Vegas, San Francisco on the road against Miami, Buffalo at home against New England, Tampa on the road against Dallas, and Green Bay at home against New Orleans. Now, my 5 best bets for week 16 of the 2024 NFL season are: I like the Chargers -3 at home Thursday night against Denver. I like Pittsburgh. Give me the points here. +6.5 Saturday afternoon going into Baltimore. I like Cincinnati laying 7 in the other AFC North matchup against Cleveland. I'll take Indianapolis laying 4.5 in their divisional matchup at home against Tennessee. I think Will Levis will throw the game away like he always does. And I like the Rams on the road. I have no idea how they're only favored by 3 here. I like them against the Jets. Like that clip from the Brand's World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brand's World podcast right here on YouTube.